The sleek black SUV glided along the winding road to Maple Ridge, the small town Logan Carter had left behind a lifetime ago. The late afternoon sun gleamed off the tinted windows, but Logan barely noticed. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his jaw firm, betraying the inner turmoil he had long suppressed. 15 years had passed since he last set foot in this place, a place steeped in memories he had buried under the weight of ambition and success. Now 37, Logan had built an empire in Boston, turning his small architectural firm into a powerhouse of modern design. Yet, for all his achievements, the road back to Maple Ridge felt heavier than the boardrooms and city skylines that had defined his adult life. His return wasn't by choice. His late grandmother, Eleanor Carter, had left one final stipulation in her will. He had to spend 3 months in Maple Ridge to inherit her considerable estate. The GPS announced his destination was just a mile away. Logan's breath hitched as he passed the familiar landscape. The sprawling oak trees lining the road stood unchanged, their ancient limbs a silent testament to time. To him, they were less welcoming sentinels and more like solemn witnesses to his reluctant return. His assistant's voice cut through the car's Bluetooth system. "Mr. Carter, your meeting with Ridgewood Technologies has been confirmed for tomorrow at 9 a.m., Rachel announced with her usual efficiency. Logan nodded, his reply curt. "Prepare the acquisition documents. Ensure the legal team is present." The truth, of course, was far more complicated. The acquisition was a convenient excuse. The real reason he was back in this quiet, sleepy town lay in the strings Eleanor had pulled from the grave. She hadn't just left him her fortune. She'd left him no choice but to face a past he had worked tirelessly to forget. Logan's grip on the steering wheel tightened as the town's modest skyline emerged on the horizon. The same white steeple church, the same cobblestone streets, even the tiny general store with its red awning, it looked eerily untouched by time. For a moment, he almost envied it. Maple Ridge had stood still, weathering the years with a quiet resilience, while Logan had spent his years running from the pain, the memories, and the life he had once dared to imagine. He pulled into the driveway of the Ridgewood Inn, the only establishment in town with any semblance of luxury. Before stepping out, he adjusted his sunglasses, shielding his eyes from the sun and the memories lurking around every corner. Logan Carter wasn't ready to face the ghosts of his past. Not yet. But he had no idea that within hours, those ghosts would find him first. Logan stepped into the Ridgewood Inn, the faint scent of lemon polish and old wood enveloping him. The lobby's vintage charm, complete with brass fixtures and a mahogany reception desk, starkly contrasted with the sleek, modern world he inhabited. The innkeeper, a short, balding man with a name tag that read George, greeted him with warmth and deference. "Welcome to the Ridgewood Inn, Mr. Carter. We've prepared the presidential suite for you. If there's anything you need, I'll let you know," Logan cut in, his tone polite but distant. He wasn't here for pleasantries. George led him to the suite, chattering about the town's unchanged charm and the upcoming Maple Ridge Harvest Festival. Logan's attention wandered as they ascended the grand staircase. He glanced at the framed photographs lining the walls, black and white snapshots of Maple Ridge from decades past. The images reminded him of Sunday afternoons spent wandering these streets with his grandmother, Eleanor. She had always loved this town. He'd always wanted more. When George finally left him, Logan surveyed the suite. Pristine linens, a clawfoot tub, and a view of the town square. He loosened his tie, poured himself a glass of whiskey from the decanter on the side table, and stared out the window. The town square was bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. Children played on the cobblestones, their laughter faint but unmistakable. He sipped the whiskey, his reflection staring back at him in the glass. A man who had everything and yet felt inexplicably hollow. And then he saw her. At the corner of the square, a woman with chestnut hair walked hand in hand with a small boy. Something about her stride, the tilt of her head, tugged at his memory. Logan's breath caught. Amelia Lawrence. He hadn't spoken her name in years, hadn't allowed himself to. The last time he saw her, they had been two fiery young souls arguing in the rain, their dreams pulling them in opposite directions. And now, here she was. Older, perhaps, but still exuding that quiet strength that had drawn him to her in the first place. But it wasn't just her. The boy at her side was maybe 5 or 6 years old. Logan leaned closer to the window, his heart pounding. The child turned his face briefly, revealing emerald green eyes and a jawline mirrored his own. Logan staggered back, the whiskey glass slipping from his hand and shattering on the floor. His pulse thundered in his ears. He couldn't believe it, wouldn't believe it. But deep down, he already knew the truth. The boy was his son. The restless night passed in a blur. Logan barely slept, pacing the sweet length as questions battered his mind. Why hadn't Amelia told him? Why had she hidden something so monumental? And why did seeing the boy, his son, stir feelings he thought he'd buried long ago? By morning, Logan was no closer to answers, only more determined to confront her. Dressed in his usual tailored suit, he walked to the one place he knew Amelia would be, Maple Ridge Library. The red brick library stood as it always had, its arched windows and ivy-covered walls a beacon of calm amidst the chaos in Logan's mind. Inside, the scent of old paper and polished wood greeted him. Amelia stood at the room's far end, surrounded by children seated on colorful cushions. She was reading aloud, her voice soft yet captivating. Logan froze, watching as the little boy, Christopher, sat among the group, his green eyes wide with fascination. What is invisible to the eye? Amelia asked the children, her tone playful. Christopher's hand shot up. What is important? He exclaimed, his voice filled with pride. You can only see it with your heart. Amelia smiled, ruffling the boy's hair. Exactly, darling. Logan's chest tightened. The tenderness in her voice and the pride in her smile were a glimpse of the life he had missed, the family he hadn't known he had. When the session ended, the children dispersed, some with parents in tow. Christopher lingered, leafing through a picture book while Amelia tidied the area. Logan took a deep breath and approached. That's a good book, he said, nodding toward the dinosaur story Christopher held. The boy looked up, his eyes curious. Do you like dinosaurs? He asked, tilting his head. I loved them when I was your age, Logan replied, trembling slightly. The T-Rex was my favorite. Christopher grinned. Mine too. But Mom says the Triceratops was cooler, 'cause it didn't hurt anyone. Amelia's voice broke the moment. Christopher, time to go. Her tone was sharp, her expression unreadable as she approached. Come on, sweetheart. We're late. But Mom, I was talking about dinosaurs with... Now, Christopher. Her voice left no room for argument. The boy sighed but obeyed, leaving the book on the shelf. Bye, Mr. Dinosaur, he said, waving shyly. Amelia grabbed his hand and turned toward the exit, but Logan stepped forward. Amelia, we need to talk. Her eyes flashed with anger. There's nothing to talk about, Logan. Please, he pleaded, his voice raw. 5 minutes. That's all I ask. She hesitated, the conflict evident in her gaze. Finally, she sighed. Tomorrow, noon, Cafe Maple. Logan nodded, his heart pounding as he watched her leave with Christopher. For the first time in years, he felt something stir within him. A mixture of regret, hope, and an overwhelming determination. He wasn't leaving Maple Ridge. Not this time. And not without the truth. Logan arrived at Cafe Maple early, his nerves betraying the usual calm confidence he exuded in boardrooms and business deals. The cozy cafe was far from the polished establishments he frequented in Boston, with its mismatched chairs and the smell of freshly baked bread wafting through the air. He chose a table by the window and ordered black coffee, though his appetite was non-existent. At precisely noon, the cafe door chimed. Amelia walked in, her steps purposeful but guarded. She wore a simple navy dress, her chestnut hair in a loose ponytail. In her hands, she clutched a manila folder, her grip so tight her knuckles whitened. Without a word, she slid into the seat opposite him. Thank you for coming, Logan began, his voice softer than he intended. Let's get this over with, Amelia replied curtly, setting the folder on the table. I assume you're here because of Christopher. Logan nodded, his throat tightening. I saw him yesterday. He trailed off, unsure how to encapsulate what he felt. He looks just like me. Amelia's expression softened momentarily before she steeled herself again. She opened the folder and pushed a birth certificate across the table. This is Christopher's birth certificate. I've also included medical records and a few other things. Just so we're clear. He's yours. Logan stared at the document. His name wasn't on it. Christopher Daniel Lawrence. Lawrence, Amelia's maiden name. He felt the sting of guilt and loss as he realized how absent he had been from his son's life. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice low but filled with emotion. "You had every opportunity." Amelia let out a humorless laugh. "Opportunity? You blocked my number, changed your email, and vanished into thin air, Logan. I tried. I called, I wrote, I even drove to Boston. But you made it abundantly clear you didn't want anything to do with this town or me." Her words hit him like a physical blow. He remembered the day he left Maple Ridge, angry and anxious, convinced that Amelia's refusal to follow him to the city betrayed their dreams. "I didn't know," he murmured. "I didn't know about Christopher." "No," Amelia said, her voice trembling. "You didn't. But you made it impossible for me to tell you." Logan leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. I thought you'd moved on, that you didn't want me in your life anymore." "Moved on?" Amelia's laugh was bitter. "I was 4 months pregnant, working 2 jobs just to get by. Eleanor was the only one who helped me. Your grandmother. She was there when you weren't." The mention of Eleanor brought a fresh wave of guilt. He had ignored her calls, convinced they were just attempts to lure him back to a town he wanted to forget. "She knew?" he asked. "She knew everything," Amelia replied. "She even tried to contact you, but you wouldn't listen." Logan closed his eyes, the weight of his choices crashing down on him. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "For everything." Amelia looked at him, her anger melting into something softer. "It's not me you owe an apology to. It's Christopher." The afternoon sunlight filtered through the cafe windows as Amelia stirred her coffee absently, her defenses cracking under Logan's sincerity. "He doesn't know about you," she admitted quietly. "I told him his father was a businessman who traveled the world. I didn't want him to feel abandoned." Logan's heart clenched. "He deserves to know the truth." "Does he?" Amelia challenged. "Do you think you can just waltz back into our lives and make up for 5 years of absence?" "I don't expect it to be easy," Logan replied, his voice steady. "But I'm not leaving again. I want to get to know him, to be his father." Amelia studied him for a long moment, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "Christopher is smart, Logan. He's kind and curious and has a bigger heart than anyone I know. But he's also fragile. If you want to be in his life, you must prove you're staying for good." "I will," Logan said firmly. "Whatever it takes." Amelia sighed, her shoulders slumping as if the fight had left her. "He has a baseball game tomorrow after school. If you're serious about this, come. But don't make any promises you can't keep." Logan nodded, relief washing over him. "I'll be there." As they left the cafe, Amelia paused at the door. "Logan," she said, her voice hesitant, "Christopher doesn't need perfection. He just needs someone who won't let him down." "I won't," Logan promised, the weight of her words settling deep in his heart. The next day, Logan arrived at the baseball field early, dressed in jeans and a casual shirt, a deliberate departure from his usual tailored suits. The field buzzed with energy as children in brightly colored uniforms warmed up for the game. From the far bleachers, Logan spotted Christopher wearing jersey number 7, his cap tilted slightly askew. The boy was practicing pitches, his face a study in concentration. Logan's chest swelled with pride and regret in equal measure. How much had he missed? "He's the starting pitcher," came Amelia's voice beside him. She had arrived quietly, carrying a water bottle and a folding chair. "Best strike average in his league." "He's incredible," Logan said softly, watching Christopher deliver a perfect pitch. The game began, and Logan found himself wholly captivated. Christopher's determination on the mound, his quiet celebrations when he struck a batter out, and even how he adjusted his cap reminded Logan of himself at that age. When the game ended, Christopher's team emerged victorious, and the boy's restrained smile hinted at his pride. As he walked off the field, His gaze landed on Logan, and a curious flicker crossed his face. "Mom, who's that?" Christopher asked, pointing toward Logan. Amelia hesitated, glancing at Logan before answering. "That's someone who wants to get to know you." Christopher frowned, studying Logan for a moment longer before nodding. Okay, it was a small step, but for Logan, it felt monumental. Watching his son walk away, Logan made a silent promise. He would earn his place in Christopher's life, no matter how long it took. The days following the baseball game were a delicate dance. Logan stayed close but careful, respecting the boundaries Amelia had drawn. Each morning, he sent Christopher a small gesture, a pack of trading cards, a new baseball glove, or a book on dinosaurs, all delivered without fanfare. At first, Christopher was curious but cautious, unsure what to make of this sudden presence in his life. Amelia noticed the effort and appreciated Logan's restraint, although she didn't say it outright. He wasn't barging into their lives. He was stepping carefully, aware of the fragile trust he was trying to build. On a crisp Saturday morning, Amelia invited Logan to join them at the town's park. "Christopher wants to practice his pitching," she explained. "If you're serious about being in his life, maybe this is a good place to start." Logan arrived early, dressed casually in a hoodie and sneakers, carrying a baseball of his own. He watched from a distance as Christopher warmed up, his movements precise and focused. Amelia stood nearby, offering occasional encouragement, her hands tucked into her jacket pockets. "Hey, Chris," Logan called as he approached, his voice steady but warm. "Mind if I catch a few pitches?" Christopher hesitated, glancing at his mother. Amelia nodded gently, and the boy shrugged. "Okay, I guess." Logan crouched behind the makeshift home plate, his heart pounding as Christopher prepared to pitch. The boy's first throw was fast. A perfect strike smacked into Logan's glove with surprising force. "Wow," Logan said, pulling off his glove to flex his hand. "That's some arm you've got there. You've been practicing?" Christopher's lips twitched into a small smile. "Grandma Eleanor used to play catch with me. She said I throw like you." The mention of Eleanor hit Logan like a wave. His grandmother had always believed in him, even when he turned his back on everything she held dear. Now, it seemed she had quietly stepped into his absence, becoming a guiding force in Christopher's life. "Well, she was right," Logan said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've got talent, Chris." The practice continued, and as the morning stretched into the afternoon, the initial awkwardness between Logan and Christopher began to fade. When they packed up, Christopher was chatting animatedly about his favorite baseball players and asking Logan about his childhood games. As they walked back to the car, Amelia lingered beside Logan. "He likes you," she said softly, her tone both surprised and cautious. "But don't rush this. He's still figuring it all out." Logan nodded. "I'm not going anywhere. I'll take it at his pace." That evening, as Logan returned to his suite at the Ridgewood Inn, his phone buzzed incessantly. The screen lit up with messages from Victoria, his fiancée in Boston. He had been avoiding her calls for days, unable to reconcile the life he had built with the one he was rediscovering in Maple Ridge. Finally, he answered. "Victoria," he said, his voice heavy with resolve. "Logan," she replied, her tone clipped. "I've been trying to reach you. What's going on? Why are you still in that town?" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "There's something I need to tell you." Her laugh was bitter. "Let me guess. It has to do with the woman and child I saw in the background of that newspaper photo." Logan froze. He hadn't realized the local paper's baseball game coverage had included a shot of him watching from the bleachers. "Victoria, Don't bother," she interrupted. "I've pieced it together. You have a son, don't you?" "Yes," Logan admitted, his voice quiet but firm. "I do, and I want to be a part of his life." "And what about us?" she demanded. "What about everything we've built, the life we planned in Boston?" Logan leaned against the edge of the desk, closing his eyes. "I thought that life was everything I wanted, but now I see. I was wrong. Wrong." Victoria's voice cracked a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You're throwing away everything for a child you just met?" "I'm not throwing anything away," Logan replied, his tone resolute. "I'm building something new, something that matters." The silence that followed was deafening. When Victoria finally spoke, her voice was cold. "You'll regret this, Logan. When the novelty wears off, and you're stuck in that small-town life, you'll regret it." "Maybe," Logan said. "But if I don't do this, I'll regret it for the rest of my life." He ended the call, the weight of finality settling over him. For years, his relationship with Victoria had been built on shared ambition and mutual benefit. But now, he realized it lacked the one thing he truly needed: connection. Logan found himself back at the window, staring out at the quiet streets of Maple Ridge. His mind replayed the day. How Christopher's face lit up when he nailed a tricky pitch, the cautious approval in Amelia's voice, the sting of his conversation with Victoria. A knock at the door broke his reverie. He opened it to find Amelia standing there, her expression a mixture of apprehension and determination. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Of course," Logan said, stepping aside to let her in. She sat on the edge of the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Christopher asked me a question tonight. He wanted to know if you would be around for his next game." Logan's heart tightened. "And what did you say?" "I told him the truth," Amelia said, "that I don't know, that I can't make promises for someone else." Logan knelt in front of her, meeting her gaze. "You can tell him I'll be there. For every game, every practice, every moment. I'm here, Amelia. For good." Her eyes searched his, and for the first time in years, Logan saw a flicker of the trust they once shared. "I hope you mean that," she said softly, "because if you let him down—" "I won't," Logan interrupted, his voice steady. "Not this time." Amelia stood, smoothing her dress. "I guess we'll see." As she left, Logan felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had made so many mistakes, but now, for the first time in years, he had the chance to make things right. And he wasn't going to waste it. The morning after his conversation with Amelia, Logan confronted another piece of his past. He drove to the house his grandmother, Eleanor, had left him, a sprawling Victorian estate on the edge of Maple Ridge. With its weathered shutters and ivy-covered facade, the home seemed frozen in time, holding stories he wasn't yet ready to face. Rose, the longtime housekeeper, greeted him at the door. Her kind but discerning eyes softened as she saw him. "I was wondering when you'd finally come by," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Eleanor always believed you'd find your way back." Logan offered a small, sheepish smile. "I suppose she was right." As Rose guided him through the house, his childhood memories flooded back. The creak of the staircase, the faint scent of lavender that lingered in the air, the sunroom where Eleanor used to sip her tea and tell him stories about the family's legacy. "She left something for you," Rose said, leading him to the study. There was a neatly tied bundle of letters on the large oak desk. "She wrote these during her last year. I think it's time you read them." Logan hesitated, his fingers brushing over the yellowed paper. He untied the bundle and opened the first letter, Eleanor's elegant handwriting staring back at him. "Today, I met your son for the first time. He has your eyes, your determination, and a curiosity that reminds me of you at his age. Amelia brought him by, and we sat in the garden. She's raising him well, Logan, but I can see the weight she carries alone. I've tried to reach you, but you won't return my calls. I understand why you left, but some things are more significant than the mistakes we've made. Come home, Logan. Your family needs you. With all my love, Grandma." Logan's hands trembled as he read the letter. He flipped to the next and then another, each one painting a picture of a life he had missed, a life Eleanor had tried to keep connected to him, even when he had pushed everything away. One letter stood out. Dated 6 years ago, it was written on the day Eleanor had learned about Christopher's birth. "Amelia doesn't know I'm writing this, but you deserve to hear it from me. You have a son, Logan. His name is Christopher, and he is extraordinary. Amelia doesn't want to burden you, but I know the truth. She's scared. Scared of raising him alone. Scared of what your absence will mean for him. You've always had reasons for staying away, but now you have every reason to return. Please, Logan. For him. For her. For us." Logan leaned back in the chair, the weight of Eleanor's words settling over him like a heavy blanket. How often had he ignored her calls and dismissed her attempts to connect, assuming she was just trying to pull him back to a place he didn't want to be. Rose interrupted his thoughts. "There's one more thing," she said, handing him a small box. Inside was an envelope with his name scrawled across it and a key. "The attic," Rose explained. "Eleanor said you'd know what to do." In the attic, Logan discovered another layer of Eleanor's secrets. Hidden among old trunks and forgotten heirlooms was a smaller chest containing business documents, photographs, and his father's journals. His father, Richard Carter, had been a man of vision, but Logan hadn't realized the depth of his connection to Maple Ridge. The journals revealed the origins of Maxwell Enterprises, not as the corporate giant it became, but as a modest architectural firm founded with Amelia's father, Daniel Lawrence Sr. They had been partners, working together to build the foundation of what eventually became a legacy. But when Richard died in a tragic car accident, Daniel had been forced to sell his shares to cover his debts. The betrayal Daniel felt, and the resentment that had festered, was now apparent to Logan. He closed the chest, his mind racing. He had considered Maxwell Enterprises his singular creation, but now he saw it differently. It wasn't just his, it was a shared dream built on the backs of both families. And somewhere along the way, that bond had been broken. Later that evening, Logan returned to Amelia's house. She opened the door cautiously, her expression wary but curious. "Can I come in?" Logan asked, holding the small chest in his hands. Amelia stepped aside, and they sat at the kitchen table. Logan opened the chest between them, pulling out the photographs and documents. "I found this in Eleanor's attic," he began. "I think you need to see it." Amelia flipped through the items, her brow furrowing as she pieced together the story. "I had no idea," she murmured, her voice heavy with emotion. "My father never talked about this. He always said your family took everything." Logan nodded. "I thought the same, but it wasn't the full story. Our families built something incredible together. And now, I think it's time to rebuild it." "What are you saying?" Amelia asked, her tone cautious. "I want to make things right," Logan said. "For you, for Christopher, and both our families. I'm planning to move Maxwell Enterprises headquarters to Maple Ridge." Amelia's eyes widened. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Logan replied. "This town is where it all began, and it's where it should continue. I want to honor the work our fathers started. But more than that, I want Christopher to grow up knowing that legacy isn't just about money or power. It's about people." Amelia studied him, her walls slowly crumbling. "That's a big step." "It is," Logan agreed. "But I'm not just doing it for the company. I'm doing it for us, for Christopher." Amelia's eyes softened, and Logan saw a glimmer of hope for the first time in years. "You've changed," she said quietly. Logan smiled faintly. "I'm trying to." They were interrupted by Christopher bounding into the room, his face lighting up when he saw Logan. "Hey, Mom, can Logan stay for dinner? I want to show him my baseball cards." Amelia hesitated, her gaze shifting between her son and Logan. Finally, she smiled. "Sure, Chris. Logan can stay." As Christopher darted to grab his collection, Logan felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. For the first time, he wasn't running away from his past. He was running toward it, and this time, he wouldn't let it slip through his fingers. Over the next few weeks, a delicate rhythm began to form. Logan became a regular fixture in Christopher's life, not through grand gestures but through the small, everyday moments that truly mattered. He showed up at baseball practices, cheered at games, and even helped with math homework, a subject Christopher both loved and excelled at. Amelia remained cautious, observing from a distance. Though she appreciated Logan's efforts, she had learned long ago not to let her guard down too quickly. Still, seeing how Christopher's face lit up whenever Logan walked through the door, she couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. One Saturday morning, Christopher burst into the kitchen with an idea. "Mom, can Logan and I build a treehouse? Like the ones in my books?" Amelia looked at Logan, who was already grinning. "If it's okay with your mom," Logan said, "I'd love to." Amelia hesitated. The thought of them working together, of Logan becoming more involved, was daunting. But Christopher's excitement was infectious. "All right," she relented. "But it has to be safe." The following weekend, Logan arrived with tools, wood, and a determination that surprised even him. Armed with a sketchpad and a collection of ideas, Christopher took the lead, declaring himself the project manager. "This is going to be the best treehouse ever," Christopher exclaimed as they began work in the backyard. For hours, they sawed, hammered, and measured, transforming the base of the towering oak tree into the beginnings of a small wooden fortress. Amelia watched from the kitchen window, her heart warming at her son laughing freely as Logan hoisted him onto his shoulders to secure a plank. As the sun set, the three sat on the porch, sipping lemonade and admiring their progress. "It's not done yet," Christopher said, "but it's going to be amazing." "It already is," Logan replied, ruffling his son's hair. Amelia glanced at Logan, her walls softening further. For the first time, she allowed herself to think that this could work. While Logan was finding his place in Christopher's life, the corporate world he had left behind wasn't so understanding. Maxwell Enterprises' board of directors grew increasingly restless with his absence. Emails, calls, and urgent meeting requests flooded his inbox, demanding immediate attention. One morning, as Logan prepared to head to Christopher's school for a parent-teacher meeting, his assistant, Rachel, called. "Logan, Bernard Wilson is on the line. He says it's urgent." Logan sighed, his jaw tightening. "Put him through." Bernard's voice was sharp. "Logan, the board has scheduled a vote of no confidence. They threaten to replace you if you don't return to Boston immediately." Logan's grip on the phone tightened. "I expected this. Then what's your plan?" Bernard demanded. "You can't run $1 billion company from a small-town backyard." "I can," Logan replied calmly, "and I intend to." Before Bernard could argue, Logan continued. "I'm moving the headquarters to Maple Ridge. We're building an innovation hub here. It's part of a broader restructuring plan." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Logan said. "Maxwell Enterprises needs a new direction, and this is it. If the board doesn't like it, they're welcome to sell their shares." Bernard sighed heavily. "You've got guts, Logan. I'll see what I can do to smooth things, but this won't be easy." "Nothing worth doing ever is," Logan replied before hanging up. Later that day, Logan shared his plans with Amelia over dinner. "You're moving the company here?" she asked, his tone of disbelief and curiosity. "I am," Logan said. "It's not just about the company, about building something meaningful, something Christopher can be proud of." Amelia studied him for a moment before nodding. "If you can pull this off, it'll be the biggest thing Maple Ridge has ever seen." Logan smiled. "It's not about how big it is. It's about making it right." The following day, Logan called an emergency board meeting via video conference. Sitting in the study of his grandmother's house, surrounded by the journals and photographs that told the story of Maxwell Enterprises' origins, he laid out his vision. "This company was built on the values of community and collaboration," Logan said. "We've strayed from that, and it's time to return to our roots. The Maple Ridge Innovation Hub will honor our past and position us for a stronger, more sustainable future." The board members exchanged skeptical glances, but Logan's confidence and passion were undeniable. By the end of the meeting, the motion had passed, narrowly, but enough. When Logan shared the news with Christopher and Amelia that evening, Christopher's face lit up. "Does that mean you're staying here forever?" he asked. Logan crouched down, meeting his son's eyes. "That's exactly what it means, buddy." Christopher threw his arms around Logan's neck, hugging him tightly. "I'm glad you're my dad." Logan's chest tightened with emotion. "I'm glad I'm your dad too." As the sun set over Maple Ridge, Logan realized he was no longer building just a company or legacy. He was building a life filled with the love and connection he had been missing for far too long. And this time, he wasn't going to let it slip away. Spring arrived in Maple Ridge, bringing with it a sense of renewal. The treehouse Logan and Christopher had started was now complete, standing proudly in the backyard like a monument to their growing bond. It wasn't perfect. There were uneven edges and a slightly crooked ladder, but Christopher loved it. To him, it was more than just a structure. It symbolized the time he spent with his father. Logan had also made progress with Amelia. While their relationship was far from what it once was, there was a sense of understanding and even cautious warmth between them. One sunny afternoon, they sat on the back porch watching Christopher and his dog, Max, play in the yard. You've been good for him, Amelia said, breaking the silence. He's happier, more confident. Logan glanced at her, his expression serious. I've missed so much, Amelia. I can never get those years back, but I want to be here for every moment from now on. She nodded, her gaze softening. I can see that. But it's not just about Christopher. It's about us too. If we're rebuilding this family, we must take it one step at a time. Logan reached for her hand, his touch gentle. I'm here for both of you. Always. Their conversation was interrupted by Christopher calling out, Mom, Dad, come see this. He stood proudly next to the treehouse, pointing at a small sign he had painted. It read, Christopher's Fort. No adults allowed, except Mom and Dad. Amelia laughed, and Logan's heart swelled. It was a small moment, but spoke volumes about how far they had come. They were no longer fragments of a broken family. They were becoming whole again. By early summer, Logan's vision for Maxwell Enterprises was taking shape. The Maple Ridge Innovation Hub plans were approved, and construction was set to begin in the fall. The project had created a buzz around town, providing jobs and bringing a renewed sense of pride to the community. But for Logan, the real work was happening at home. One warm June morning, Logan woke early to prepare for a special day. He had planned a picnic at Lake Monroe, where he and Amelia had shared many memories. It was also where he intended to ask her a question that had been on his mind for weeks. The lake was as picturesque as ever, its surface glistening in the sunlight. Christopher ran ahead with Max, his laughter echoing through the trees. Logan and Amelia followed, carrying a basket filled with sandwiches, fruit, and lemonade. As they spread out the blanket under the shade of an old oak tree, Logan couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. Do you remember this spot? He asked, his voice soft. Amelia smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. How could I forget? This is where you tried to impress me with your fishing skills and fell into the water. Logan chuckled. And you laughed at me the entire time. I still said yes when you asked me for hot chocolate, she teased. Their laughter faded into a comfortable silence as they watched Christopher try to teach Max to fetch sticks from the water. Logan reached into his pocket, his fingers brushing against the small velvet box he had been carrying for weeks. Amelia, he began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I know we've been taking things slowly, but I need you to know something. She turned to him, her expression curious but calm. What is it? Logan took a deep breath and opened the box, revealing the engagement ring he had kept all these years. I've made many mistakes, but the biggest one was letting you go. You've given me a second chance, not just with Christopher, but with you. I love you, Amelia. I always have. And I want to spend the rest of my life making things right. Will you marry me? Amelia's eyes filled with tears as she stared at the ring. She didn't speak for a moment, and Logan's heart pounded in his chest. Finally, she smiled, her voice trembling with emotion. Yes, Logan, I'll marry you. Christopher, overhearing from a distance, ran toward them, his face lighting up with excitement. Does this mean we're going to be a real family? He asked, his voice filled with hope. Logan pulled him into a hug. We already are, buddy. But now, it's official. A month later, under the same oak tree, Logan and Amelia exchanged vows in an intimate ceremony surrounded by friends, family, and the community that had watched their journey unfold. Christopher stood proudly as the ring bearer, beaming as his parents sealed their love with a kiss. As they danced under the stars that night, Logan whispered to Amelia, "This is the life I've always wanted. Not skyscrapers or boardrooms, this." Amelia leaned into him, her voice soft but steady. And this time, we're building it together. Logan glanced at Christopher, who was laughing with his grandfather, Daniel, as they worked on plans for a new addition to the treehouse. The sight filled him with a sense of peace he had never known. Some legacies weren't built in steel and glass, Logan realized. They were built in moments like these: love, forgiveness, and second chances. And in that moment, as the moon rose over Maple Ridge, Logan knew he was exactly where he was meant to be.